Students might be wondering how we can say that the AAMC rigs the passage order. But the first thing to remember is that AAMC is not our friend. We've previously discussed how the order of the sections on the MCAT, starting from Chem Phys, Cars, Bio to Psych Soc, has significant implications for the psychological well-being of test takers, especially since Chem Phys is the hardest section and it's typically up front, which ruins a lot of test takers' performance throughout the exam. But remember, if they're doing this level of psychological manipulation in a broad scale, what about at the micro scale? What about at the passage level or even the question level? In this lesson, we're going to take a look at what AAMC does to the passage order in order to make the test a lot more difficult for students. And the lessons here are pretty applicable to all 4 sections. So let's take a look. The first thing we want to bring up is the concept of front loading. So what does front loading mean? Basically, it's the AAMC practice of pushing a higher degree of medium and hard questions and passages to the front of the exam instead of evenly distributing it. So what does it look like? Let's take a look at an example right here. This is an ideal cars section, and you will never ever see this on test day, so it's just a theoretical example. But basically, the first 3 passages are fairly easy. The next set is medium-ish, it's definitely getting harder, and the last set is really, really hard. Students might be wondering, well, what really sets a passage from being easy to medium to hard? We discuss all those topics in different lectures, and for Chem Phys, Bio, and Psych Soc, which are the heavily content-based sections, passage difficulty is determined in different ways. But remember, anyone who's taken the exam or studied for the exam can definitely attest to the fact that some passages are easy, some are a little harder, and some are just really, really hard. So there is a significant distribution in the style and substance of passages, which determines difficulty order, and students definitely feel that on test day. But we know for sure that the AAMC does not like the setup. Why not? Basically, because students will do much better on the exam. If you finish all the easies and mediums within a reasonable amount of time, you're going to save a lot of time in your time bank and be able to use that on the harder questions in the harder passages and therefore score higher. That's the natural strategy that most people who are scoring in the 90th percentile and above use, because it allows them to apply more pressure where they need more time. So AAMC obviously knows this. So how are they going to create a difficulty curve for students? Well, it's easy. In most real test-based scenarios and even most practice tests that the AAMC has, this is the order that we typically see passages in. They start off a little light, but soon it starts getting significantly harder. And as you can see, if you kind of split this in half and take a look at the first 4 passages, these are fairly challenging, especially in the beginning of the exam. Whereas if you look at the first 4 passages here, these are, well, not so challenging. They're easy. You're going to lose a lot of time as an average test taker in this bracket because you're dealing with passages that are way above what you're used to, and it's going to be coming very early on in the exam. So the trick here is basically AAMC wants you to burn your time bank, because on this test we know that test control is equivalent to time control. And when you're faced with mediums and hards very early on in the exam, you have a lot of time. So you get subtly tricked into thinking you can use a little bit more time to solve this. But what happens in the long run is that since you burn that time early on, you lose time as you continue through the exam. And once you get to a certain point, you become behind where you should be. And then you're playing the game of catch up. And the thing is, regardless of whether a question or a passage is easy or hard, you need time to solve it. And here, as you can see with this easy passage right at the end, even if this was the easiest passage in the world, what if you only had 4 minutes to read the passage and do the questions? That would be insane. But that's a situation that AAMC wants to force you into. And here's the big takeaway from this lesson that students should really walk away with. It's basically the fact that if AAMC rigs the passage order, which they do, as an average student trying to push for the highest scores possible, our goal should be to rearrange the passage order into a way that maximizes our time efficiency. At MCAT Savior, we're really big on timing and test taking strategy that's in this vein. And if you're interested in how you can size up passages in order to know when to move them and when to do them, we have all of those lessons free on our Module 0 skill set. The way we usually call that strategy is called a passage biopsy and passage dancing. Basically, how to assess passages and then how to move them or dance around them to increase your capability to get higher scores. Because remember, an average student who magically had this setup on test day is going to do much better than an average student who had the same passages, but they're set up like this. So it's definitely something for you to think about when you're forming your test taking strategy for taking cars. And we hope this lesson helped. All right, that was a complicated lesson. If you still need help, check out our full-length blog post that we linked in the video description, explore more of our YouTube channel, or just head on over to mcatsavior.com where you can get all of our strategy courses for free.